Matchbook Horse Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, standing in for Dubai bound Tom Stanley with great trio here, Steve Jones, Dan Overall, and Charlie Poste. And Steve, Tom's off to Dubai. We're stuck here previewing Kelso and Newbury.
Yeah, much rather be here. Thank you.
Good. That's good. Yeah,
we can have a bet here. That's the thing. We can have a bet here.
That's true. Charlie Poste, how's it going? Good Cheltenham?
Yeah, really good Cheltenham, Dan. I thought it was unbelievable racing, to be honest. It was a lot of good news, positive stories. And yeah, racing likes to beat itself with a metaphorical stick. But, I don't think they have any need to after last week. And they should be doing all they can to bloody champion the sport, Yeah,
it was brilliant. You were doing work for 5 Live, was it?
Yeah, I was working for 5 Live all week. Up in the commentary box with John Hunt, and best view in the house. And like I say, there was plenty of good stuff to be watching, that's for sure.
And Dan, you weren't working for 5 Live, or indeed anyone. You were off, so you had a chance to enjoy Cheltenham. How did the 4 days go in terms of staying on? Was there ups and downs, I guess, both on and off the racetrack?
Yeah, it was Tuesday was just an incredible day, and it really took its toll to a certain extent. By Wednesday, I couldn't speak, which wasn't ideal, but I more like conflated rather than galloping to Champs. I crawled over the line. I just about got up, and we've lived to tell the tale. But it was some week there. I mean, that Tuesday will be a day of racing that I will never forget. That an hour with Constitution Hill and Honeysuckle, first class, absolutely first class.
Yeah, no, definitely. For me, anyway, I thought of the 2015-16 festivals. I thought it was right up there. Looking back at it, probably even exceeded those couple of days in March. It's just incredible stuff. And like you guys said, I think there's a bit of buzz back in horse racing with all the whip debate and stuff that going into it. There just wasn't. So it's great to see. It's the kind of like, it's a bit of the racing's okay. I think is the best way to describe it. At Kelso, Newbury, we actually are going to cover Meydan as well. Steve and Charlie have a couple of picks there as well. If you are watching on the YouTube stream, do get involved in the live stream. And if you're watching back, do hit that like button and let us know your best bet in the comments. We'll get straight into it, guys, and we'll start with the 130 and Newbury and take a look at the betting that we currently have on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. You can back Iniston at 4.0. Tootless is available at 6.0. Pearly Island, 8.0. Blow Your Wad, 8.5. Atlanta Brave, 9.0. The same price for Artistic Choice. It's 11.0 and bigger the rest. Steve, we'll hand over to you for this one. First race on the ITV card.
Indeed it is. Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to this because there's lots of runners and it's competitive and you get good prices. So I think it's a really good day's racing. Iniston is favourite, but 2 weeks after finishing second in that EBF final on heavy ground at Sandown, I mean, that was a good run, but that's a brutal race. And 2 weeks isn't long enough for me to want to back a horse that's at the top of the market. Not long enough recovery time. Now, Equinus finished miles behind Iniston at Sandown in a handicap in February. And I was surprised with the way that horse was ridden that day because previously to that at Four Slats had won over 2.5 miles from a prominent ride and it kicked aside some all right handicappers, holding Equinus up at Sandown. I never really like horses that are held up off the pace at Sandown. I think it can be hard to get into the race, and that was certainly the case from Equinus. So I'm willing to give him another chance, and the market's overreacted to that below par performance. So Equinus winning place for me. And I think we are getting somewhere around 12.0.
Yeah, 12.0 currently, double figure price. We're all against the favourite here, Charlie.
Yeah, I think for the reasons Steve said. I mean, there's a lot of progressive horses in here, really, and it's trying to find who's sort of got some manoeuvrability with that handicap mark. I came down with Atlanta Brave. I think Kerry Lee's are running okay at the moment. The horse that he beat at Hereford last time, Haraki Golf, ran okay again, finished second at Warwick yesterday. And I thought he was a lot more value than the 3/4 length margin. He won. He idled quite badly after the last. I think this more galloping circuit should suit him. Be interested to see what the ground ends up riding. I don't know. We've had plenty of rain about whether it ends up a bit slower than good to soft. And again, I think this horse will be absolutely fine on that. And like I say, a more stamina test over the sort of intermediate triple suit him well. So Atlanta Brave for me.
Yeah, 9.0 currently. Pearly Island's 8.0, Dan, and you like it winning place?
Yeah, I think this is as Steve mentioned, a very competitive race. I think Inniston, the reason the lads have touched on, I just couldn't really be interested at that kind of price. Fully respect him other than that. But I mean, Pearly Island as a horse, it almost seems unfair a novice having his 12th run over hurdles here. But he's really turned the corner in his last few runs. Only got £5 for what was quite an impressive win at Fontwell. Look, I know people will say that's Fontwell, but it was a decent race for the grade and for the track. Powered clear in a manner of a real galloper who's going to like the ground as testing as it can possibly be. I'm working on the assumption that it's going to be a minimum soft based on the rain around, based on the potential for more rain today as well. Looking at the forecasts, obviously, we'll know a bit more about how it's riding after today, but I think it's going to be fairly testing. So I think 2.5 miles on a stiff enough track, softer ground's really going to suit. And if you go back to his 2-mile handicap run here a year ago, over 2 miles, where he stayed on really strongly, the form of that one has worked out extremely well. I mean, the first was Punctuation, who's now £23 higher. Irish Hill was second, is £26 higher. And the fourth, Mark of Gold, is £21 higher. So he clearly rides the track okay. Conditions will suit. Competitive race, but I think he's a decent win and place pay.
Okay, that's Purdy Island for Dan, Atlanta Brave for Charlie, and Equinus for Steve, all taking on the favourite in the 130. And Newbury, we move on to the 2-mile, 5-furlong handicap hurdle from Kelso and take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back Prairie Wolf here as the favourite at 6.0, Carl Blue 6.5, Ucan Falls available at the same price. We'll go again 9.0, Les's Legacy 10.0, Salvino 11.0, the Navigator 13.0, along with Limerick Leader, and bigger prices the rest. So Dan, straight back to you on this one. Well, he's now the favourite, Prairie Wolf 6.0. Would you still play that in the win and place market? You think it's a solid enough bet here?
Yeah, it's a competitive race again. I mean, for all you can say about the racing this weekend, there are some very competitive betting heats. Yeah. So there's no complaints on that front whatsoever. I do like the place option with Prairie Wolf, just because they say it is a strong race, and he does have a habit of finding maybe one or two too good like he did last time. But I think he's been quite cleverly campaigned by Sue Smith. Like, he was a very decent bumper horse, winning 2 bumpers, and Sue Smith would not be known for a bumper wins whatsoever. It's a bit of a slow burner over hurdles, but clearly now going the right way, improving for going over in handicaps and for the application of cheap pieces. And I thought he was a bit unlucky last time out. Like, he made a very bad error at the second last, but the front two pulled 8 lengths clear. I think the winner's actually a fairly decent sort for the level. Was running for Bent Pauling, was quite fancied for a Warwick race the other day, but fell early. Had some very decent form before that. And he's only gone up £5 for that run, which I think is still workable. Like, his overall profile suggests he's still progressive. And I think based on his bumper form and genuinely how he is going the right way, I think there's a bit more to come. And there's a potential there's 1 or 2, maybe a bit better handicap, but I think he's still going the right way. And I think he'll be there or thereabouts.
Okay, Prairie Wolf. And look, the advantage of betting on the Matchbook Betting Exchange, you can pick your place terms. So a lot of sportsbooks are going 4. We'll have 3 place, 4 place, 5 place market. So pick how solid you want in the place market. DC is very good at going 3/4 of a stake on the place market and a quarter on the win market. Though he says every time he does that, it obviously wins. And every time he doesn't, it obviously places. So it's a good way to pick your terms, bet how you like it, so you're not really dictated by the sportsbooks. Charlie, in agreement with Steve here, Carl Blue, the second fav here.
Yeah, just kept it simple. You know, he's looked very progressive. Won his last 2 starts. He's an 8-year-old with plenty of experience in racing, but he seems to be sort of progressing. I mean, he was trained in Ireland and was a good bit higher at one stage. And the tongue strap that he wore a lot on over there was reapplied at Musselburgh and seemed to work the Oracle. And he won well off 94. And then he took a race out of there, readily off 100. And he's up another 7. But I'm not sure that maybe represents the ceiling of his ability, and on his past form, it definitely doesn't. And like I say, he just seems to be progressing well. Add in Sean Bowen, who to me is one of the best jockeys riding, and he's in the form alongside Matchbook ambassador Ollie Murphy, in incredible form at the moment, is an added bonus.
And a little bit on Sean Bowen, Charlie. He's a great partnership with Ollie, and I guess being able to ride for other yards as well as being he is essentially the number 1 for Ollie, bar maybe the big meetings. Perhaps if there's 2 meetings on a day, Aidan Coleman might take the star name, but by and large, Sean Bowen is the number 1 there right now. Yeah,
without doubt. I mean, I think it's more that Sean, when he sort of the matchup with Ollie came at the beginning of the year, was still had a lot of other people to ride for, and so there wasn't going to make 110% commitment to riding them all. Like you say, Aidan had an existing relationship with the yard, with a few of the more established names, the Brewing Up a Storms, etc. But I think as time is moving forward, you're seeing that Sean, with the great respect to Aidan, is probably the future of the yard and where they're going to end up leaning to, you know. And yeah, I just think he's one of those jockeys that It doesn't matter if it's a 0 to 100 round a really small track or a big occasion. You know exactly what you're going to get with Sean Bowen, and that's 110% of everything. And from a punter's point of view, I think he's a brilliant jockey to have on side, Dan.
Yeah, I think like on Ollie's runners, just last 15 runners, I think only one's been outside the top 3. So definitely a yard in form. Steve, you're in agreement with Charlie's selection here?
Yeah, not massively strong because of the price, but I just thought he was the obvious one. And Sean Bowen going up there is really eye-catching. And I liked his form. He's taken a while to hit form for Darragh Bullock. As Charlie said, he had decent enough form in Ireland, and he's really hit form recently. And I thought the good thing, his last 2 wins, Musselburgh and then at Ayr, they were both in this sort of grade. So although he's been going up in the handicap, he's not going up in grade, which I think is far, far more important than any extra weight that you're getting. It's the level of horses you're taking on, and he's not taking on anything he hasn't really seen before. So, yeah, solid one towards the head of the market for Coral Blue.
Okay, yeah, 2 selections for Coral Blue, Charlie and Steve, and Dan's with the Fav in Priory Wolf. We'll move on to the 205 in Newbury. It's a 2-mile, 4 furlong handicap chase, and we'll take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com. You come back, Aspire de Guy, 5.5, the same price for Dan Skelton's runner, Heltonham, Super 6, 6.5. Riders on the Storm, one of my favorite all-time horses, 8.0, and bigger prices the rest. We will stick with you, Steve, on this one, and you're in agreement with Charlie again?
Yeah, if I can just get the race up, because I just seem to have clicked on some all-weather race. I don't know how I've done that. But
loves the all-weather.
Yeah, well, I do actually.
I know you do.
Super
Too
6.
much.
Super 6 is my horse in this. I think it's a bit of a messy race for me, and I do consider Heltonham probably the most likely winner, but he's one that is stepping up hugely in grade, and I don't want to bet him at the prices. So Super 6, I thought did it really nicely at Haydock last time. It all seemed to come together, and the way he travelled that day was really impressive. There's a slight concern about the ground, but when you've got Nigel Twiston-Davies, I don't tend to worry too much about that, because his horses seem to go through soft ground quite well. I don't know whether that's because they're just so fit or what it is, but it's a young progressive horse who had some good form in novice races behind the likes of Strawfan Jack, Unanswered Prayers, before winning at Haydock, and now I think he's ready to kick on.
Okay, yeah, Charlie, agreement again. But this is a recurrent thing, by the way. It'll be the next race as well.
No, that is a funny job for today. It's not often like that.
He loves me, really. That's the thing. He pretends not to.
I do love you, of course I do. Yeah, and you're one of my favourites, Steve. You know that. But yeah, this horse he finished 5th behind Sir Gerhard in the Champion Bumper. Again, he beat Dr. Ken in a novice hurdle last year, who I think is a talented performer for Ollie Murphy. And it just seems that it's taken him a while to get the hang of chasing, but I thought it all came together very, very well at Haydock last time out. And a £9 rise up. Again, I'm not sure that reflects the ceiling of this horse's ability, especially now he's got his confidence in the jumping department and found some rhythm with the chasing. So, and then for all the other reasons, as Steve has already said, I go along with, and he just looks like he's a potential improver in this sort of race.
Okay, so listeners and viewers will basically over the next few races will decide where to go with Charlie and Steve, the team Steams, or to go with Dan overall selections each time. So it's one or the other. I think there's no in between, Dan.
Yeah, the black sheep over here, just daring to go against them. I should have done my selections a bit later, and maybe we could have just had all Unity, but no, I decided to go a bit early. But I think this is a thing. The races this weekend, again, are very competitive. I think this is just another example of that. Like you can see, it's 5.5 the field. That wouldn't normally be the case. And I think you're placing a lot of faith in Paul Nicholls if you're trusting a squad, but he sounded fairly bullish in his columns, and he doesn't often get it wrong, especially in this type of race, I think. Like this kind of middle grade handicap, I think he has a very good radar for when he's got a horse spot on. I just think that's the case here. It was clearly he wasn't properly right on his first start for the yard last time. He was very weak in the market. I know he has generally a very good record in that race, but the betting couldn't have him, and it suggests he will come on plenty for that. He was dropped £4 for it. He wasn't really knocked about much. He's now £5 below his last winning mark. And I think a return to what I'm thinking will be a much softer surface definitely plays in his favour. Like, I appreciate he's also top weight, but I think relatively speaking, this isn't the deepest of contests. It's an open race, but I wouldn't call it an incredibly deep handicap. If he returns to the form he has shown previously for Paul Nicholls here, back on his favoured soft and heavy ground, I think he's got a really good chance off this mark.
Okay, we're flying through it. Esparta for Dan, Super 6, agreement with Steve and Charlie, and agreement in the next, as I touched on, the 225 in Kelso, 3 mile, 2 furlong handicap hurdle. We'll take a look at the betting as you have it at matchbook.com. Not as big a field here. Jet Legs is the favourite at 4.33. Theme Tune available at 4.5. Spike Jones, the same price. Inishore available at 5.5 for the Cinder Russell. PM 8.0. Flower Scotland 9.0. And Leo Star is the rag of the field at 15.0, Charlie. So who do you like in this race?
Iniswa, I've sided with. I mean, going back to that Musselburgh run on his penultimate start that he beat Outlaw Pete. So we've seen Outlaw Pete come out and take a handicap hurdle at that Kenton meeting that's after Cheltenham off 130. And, I just think on a line through that, this horse, he surely got an upside off 122. He then ran in the Rendlesham and really, I mean, he had little or no chance in that sort of Grade 2 contest, but back down in calmer waters now. And again, I just thought that he has handicapping scope to be a little bit ahead of his mark and have some movement there, Dan.
Okay, yes, Steve, anything to add to Charlie's case? Or are you just going to Control-C, Control-V again?
Yeah, probably. I thought, considering the way he won at Musselburgh when his jumping wasn't fantastic, and I think it's probably wise not to take the form too literally with Outlaw Peter, but it's still a very, very good run. I was surprised they went up in grade so quickly. They went up to a Grade 2 because his jumping hadn't been fantastic. And I think this lower grade into a handicap for the first time will just help his jumping a little bit. And if that's the case, then he's certainly got the engine and taking a bit of a chance on his jumping. But I think he's up to this sort of job.
And for the listeners and viewers again, Steve, Charlie, who was first on the dock this morning?
I've got to give it to Steve, to be fair. Yeah,
I wasn't this morning. I was yesterday.
Yeah, come on, Steve. Yeah. Correct answer there. So look, interesting. That's interesting. Now, okay, Dan.
Yeah, I'll touch on this. Actually, he was the second choice for me in this race. It came down between him and Theme Tune. I just thought maybe I think Innisor even had an Albert Bartlett entry earlier in the season. So I think they clearly think an awful lot of him. I just came down to Theme Tune because 3 mile 2 at Kelso can be a very grueling test. And I just think Theme Tune is probably more ready for it at this stage of his career. Like Nick Alexander's done a great job with this horse. Like he had been a very promising sort with John Joe O'Neill earlier in his career. 1, 2 novice hurdles, just didn't kick on. But it's now 2 from 3 with Nick. Only defeat came on his debut where the cheek pieces were left off, but won his last 2. And the form of those wins has worked out pretty well. He beat a very hot favourite from the Oliver Greenall yard at Haydock. He went on to win his next 2 starts, admitting the other fences. His last win as well, the 2nd and 4th from Newcastle, that both won next time out. I just think he's a very thorough stayer who's going to appreciate this very stiff test. We know the Kelso finish demands a lot of a horse. I still think there's some upside off that mark of 1-2-2 based on what he previously achieved. And I think the ground at Kelso will probably be around good to soft in places. He's one who won't mind any more rain that falls, but on an upward curve still, I think he'll really relish the conditions. Okay, that's Theme Tune for Dan, Inishore for Steve and Charlie. And the winner wasn't even mentioned, which is my best bet, which will be coming in the best bets section. So stay tuned for the winner of the 225. At Kelso, we move on to the 240 at Newbury. It's a mare's novices hurdle. We'll take a look at the betting that we have at matchbook.com. Ruby Island is favourite. This is a very competitive field. Speaking of competitive fields, Albus Walk is 9.0, the same price for Royal Dance. Energy 1, 10.0. Movidia 11.0. Let's Go to Vegas 11.0. Presenting a Queen 11.0. The same price for Blue Beach and 12.0 and bigger the rest. So Dan, straight back to you on this one. I mean, this is one of them where you're thinking you can make a feasible case for 12. Like, it's an absolute minefield of a race, always is. And I don't know how I've managed to land on Ruby Island, who's still the head of the market. I mean, this market could fluctuate quite drastically between now and the off. It only takes a bit of support for one of these and the market will change drastically. But she's a mare I have a lot of time for, and I still think there's a fair bit more to come. She was very decent in bumpers, won her first 2 over hurdles, and was very, very well back for the second of those, which I think Mark Wolford, after that race, said she might even be one for the mare's novice hurdle at Cheltenham. So clearly they think she's a quality mare. I think she was unlucky last time in a race that just didn't suit her. It was run at a real cruel. She was held up off the pace, had to make up a lot of ground. The winner was prominent all the way throughout, and those two pulled a mile clear. I think a 2 mile 4 on soft ground in a big field, getting a proper test of stamina is exactly what she wants. The cheap piece is gone for the first time. I think that's because she just has a tendency to idle a bit when in front. She did so at Weatherby. She doesn't necessarily put it all in. And the first time cheap pieces worked the Oracle for Into Overdrive last season, about this time last year. They really transformed him for the Mark Wolford yard. So if they can do likewise for Ruby Island, then she'll be in with a cracking chance. But I say this is a race you kind of have to play win and place, because this is incredibly difficult. And I'd say good luck if you're having a bet in this. It's a tough old thing here. Yeah,
and we have 3 selections going up, all win and place selections. Charlie?
I came down with Movidi for the Noel Williams team. Noel's won this twice in the last 10 years, so knows the right sort of horse for this race. Just got touched off by a horse at Ria Poses. I love the nightlife at Doncaster after making all jumping well. Before that, she won nicely around Lingfield. I think, as Dan has said, this is a real trappy race. I mean, like she's rated 118 this mare, and she's nearly top weight. So as it stands right now, plenty of these are sort of at a fairly ordinary level. But I'd imagine, looking through previous winners, there's horses with scope to rate it a good bit higher than this, and it's trying to find the right one with the sort of profile to go beyond this. I also think the connections of this, the Noel Feely Racing Syndicate, they made some very shrewd purchases over the last couple of years while they've been operating, and Movidi, I think, has the scope to be another one of those. And again, being positively ridden in this race also isn't a negative. There's been plenty of winners over the last few runnings that have been up there making the running. So Movidi for me, win and place, but this is ultra competitive.
Yeah, of course, Love Envoy running very well, second to Honeysuckle in the mare. Steve?
Yeah, I'm going for the outsider of the entire field at about 34.0. The horse with the most experience, and some would say the most exposed, but I think experience counts for a lot in this sort of race. And this is Philippa Sue, who fans of the beautiful South might know a little bit about. But Philippa Sue has started off in handicaps this season, came across from Ireland where it had form in bumpers behind the likes of Colonel Mustard, and just took a season to acclimatise, joined Graham McPherson, and now obviously with Fergal O'Brien in that setup. Won at Hereford on soft ground. And I think that's key, because there's a lot of horses in here, to my mind, who don't want soft ground, and I think it's going to be pretty testing. There's a bit more rain on the way, and I don't think good ground or good to soft ground horses are going to be able to cope with it, especially in a big field like that. And I think this is what Philippa Sue wants. Clearly stays very well, and it's been the last twice in small field races. The first time was at Wincanton in a novice hurdle where it was dominated from the front. Philippa Sue was right out the back. Lime Avenue and Great Snows also in this race were in front of her, but she was right out the back, and again held up at Market Raisin last time. She gets a real good pace to aim at, which I think she probably will. She'll be the one finishing, that's for sure, and I think she's well handicapped on that. And Jack Hogan, who I think is a really promising young jockey. I think he's Dennis Hogan's cousin or something like that, but he's a good lad, and he takes off £5.
Okay, Philippa Sue, 34.0 currently for Steve, Movidi for Charlie, and Ruby Island for Dan in the 240 at Newbury. We move on to another mare's handicap hurdle, 3 o'clock in Kelso, and take a look at the betting that we have at matchbook.com. Bonte is a clear favourite here, 3.25 or 9-4 in all money terms. Walking No Shame is 6.0, Autumn Return and Jane de Burleigh 7.0, Midnight Shuffles 9.0, Never No Trouble 11.0, and 13.0, and bigger prices the rest. So Steve, we'll go straight back to you on this one. Sorry, Steve. I always feel that anytime one sec. Every time we hand over to Steve first in any race, Tom included, he always feels like you're not ready and surprised. It's a 1 in 3 chance I will go to you on each race.
It's because I've got so many screens up and I have to mute because my computer makes such a stupid noise. That is the reason. I'm not surprised. I'm just trying desperately. And I was the worst person at computer games in the world. So my hand coordination is why I'm so bad. I tried betting it running and I was just so bad at it because my hands don't move quick enough.
Well, come
So,
here. Say what you want about Tom Stanley. He is the king of the mute button. He has the mouse over it and he just turns it on and off. It's just genuine. You should ask him for a bit of advice.
He's smooth. He's smooth.
Yeah,
I don't. There's lots of things I doubt about Tom Stanley, but it's not his smoothness.
And
Anyway.
last question on this, Steve. Right. So what is open in front of you? Racingpost.com, I presume. Anything else? The doc.
The odds checker.
Keep it clean.
Sporting Life. Twitter.
Sporting Life. Okay, Twitter.
I used to work at Sporting Life, so I use Sporting Life a bit. Twitter, Racing Post, and Raceform Interactive, which is my form book thing that I think is very good.
Very good.
Anyway, and my form book has come up with Bonte of Fergal O'Brien's again. Ferg's. I still don't think anyone's trained more winners this season, have they, than Ferg? And he's still in sparkling form. This horse had huge form in bumpers. Was won 3 of them and was then second to Queen's Gamble at Cheltenham in November. Switched to hurdles and won probably not a particularly strong race at Exeter, but then was beaten at odds on. But this horse is learning all the time, and I am absolutely certain it on handicap debut is well treated, and I think she is going to put it all together in this quite valuable Mares final. It's funny to have 2 Mares novice finals on the same day, but I suppose they are about 300 miles apart or whatever it is.
Fergal O'Brien, 127 winners. Paul Nicholls, 143 winners this season, so he has overtaken him in the last 2 weeks.
Oh, he has overtaken him.
Yeah, would have been a good stat. Dan, same. You're in agreement.
Yeah, actually, it feels nice to have someone on my side for once. I've been going against the flow for all this time, but I've touched on what Steve said. I mean, this could potentially be an extremely well handicapped mare, like extremely good in bumpers. Obviously, there have been some issues over hurdles. She hasn't been the slickest over obstacles, but I thought there were signs at Market Raising that she was getting the hang of it, giving a very patient ride that day between a smart horse, Wally Murphy's, who Meydan was never really challenged, but given a very patient ride, snuck into the race. She was still sticky at a few, but I think she was almost being allowed to make up her mind with a view to going on and potentially tackling handicap company. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they've had this race in mind for some time, because this is a very valuable prize in its own right. I say Paddy and Fergal go all the way up to Kelso just for this one ride. I think Fergal has a 33% strike rate at Kelso as well, so that would bode pretty well for her chances. And she just has the potential to be thrown in, a bit like Molenbeek was earlier in the season, like a very classic bumper mare. Didn't quite live up to expectations early on in the hurdles career, but thrown in on handicap debut, I think she could be very much of a similar mold.
Yeah, this is one of the races I did actually have a good look, and I would be in agreement with that. I think that form Charlie behind Huvari could work out quite well, and she didn't get to run the race there last time out either. You're going to go against her, though?
Yeah, I've gone away from her. I mean, I can see that, and like you say, Huvari probably has the potential to again progress a lot further than he has shown up to now. But I came down with Autumn Return for the Ruth Jefferson team. Their horses are in pretty good form at the moment. Slightly unlucky with Sounds Russian in the Gold Cup. You know, got brought down when he looked in the process of running a decent race in that contest. And this mare again has been progressive. The only sort of disappointing run this year was behind Lucia in a listed race where maybe she was outclassed. But you know, she got a mark of 113, and she ran well last time out. At Newcastle, and didn't really lose a lot in defeat. I think she has the ability to stay a little bit further, and if the ground gets slower, again, Kelso is somewhere where you're going to have to see the races out, stiff finishing track, and for all that, look, Bonte could just be chucked in, but I just feel this mare is pretty solid. She hurdles well. She's tactically adaptable. She can go forward if needs be, and maybe she's just a bit more professional at this stage of her life.
Okay, yeah, Autumn Return for Charlie, Bonte for Steve and Dan, and for what it's worth, I'd be inclined to agree with Steve and Dan on this one. We'll move on to the final ITV UK race that will be covered, or ITV will be covered on Saturday, and take a look at the betting for the 3:35 in Kelso, 3 mile, 2 furlong handicap chase. Forward plan, the favourite of 4.0, half shot 5.5, Clongyle Way at 6.0, Hill 16 7.0, same price for Doyen Breed, Mighty Thunder 11.0, Big River 13.0, 15.0. And bigger price the rest. Steve, we're going to go to you here. Hill 16, but I have a quick question. What is and where is Hill 16?
Is it at the SCG?
The,
that
the
right?
what? The SCG.
Yeah, it's
the,
Sydney Cricket Ground.
no, you're in
isn't
a
it?
different hemisphere now. It's one of the best stands in Croke Park, Dublin,
Yeah, I
Ireland.
thought there
Sorry,
is a
threw me.
hill or something at Sydney, or one of the cricket grounds in Australia. Sorry.
I couldn't think of a worse guess than the SCG, because that's what I
I
thought
was
you said.
I was
That's why I
furthest
asked.
away. I was furthest away than I could possibly be.
It was named after the 1916 Rising, so it's made out of rubble from the 1916 Rising. We won't get into too much else from the
That's
political sphere of
interesting.
that, but it's where all the Dublin GA fans go historically for Hill 16. GA fans aren't segregated, unlike football and rugby. Well, football anyway.
Cricket aren't.
Cricket aren't, yeah. So it's like cricket, but it is the one segregated place. It isn't, but mostly Dublin fans go there. So yeah, there's a bit of trivia for you, Steve.
Brilliant. Big Dubs fan. Big Dubs
Up
fan.
the Dubs, yeah.
Hill 16 is the horse that I like in this. I'm quite pleased you gave me a history lesson or to have learnt that. And Hill 16's got some really good form. The horse was beaten a whisker, thankfully, because I backed Snow Leopardess in the Beecher Chase last year, but would have been in front in another stride. And that's kind of Hill 16. Stays very well, but does like Kelso. I think it's only 2 visits for Kelso because he's knocking on a bit. He's 10-year-old. And his first visit to Kelso, he was only in March of last year when he was second to Nutswell in the Premier Chase. I mean, he shot up in the handicap, unfortunately, but then he came out first time this season, was third to Sounds Russian and I Right. Well, that's really good form. And he's had a break since running down the field in this year's Beecher, but he's the kind of horse that's not really, even though he nearly won the previous year, he's not really suited to the Beecher because he likes to come from off the pace. He needs a sound gallop, and the Grand National fences don't these days really lend themselves to horses coming from off the pace. So he's been freshened up by that. He's had a breathing operation as well. I can't say he's spectacularly well handicapped, and if anything, is there a little bit more progressive forward plan is probably the one you'd be looking at there. Then he might just be vulnerable, but he's had a breathing operation. He likes the track. He stays very well, and this sort of trip, he'll be seeing it out when others won't be finishing as strongly. So Hill 16 for me.
It's like the Cop, Steve, the Cop of Dublin. So, you know, in Liverpool.
The history lesson never ends.
That's football, isn't it? Football.
Yeah, for now.
It's like the Mound stand at Lords, is it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I didn't listen to a word of Steve's case there. I was just thinking of ways to describe Hill 16. I'll send you all the trivia for that after. Dan and Charlie agree here. Doyen Breed, who wants to take it? We'll go Dan this one.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead. I think it's interesting that Sandy Thompson runs 2 here, Hill 16 being the other. So we're kind of all relying on Sandy to have a decent enough race here. I just thought it was interesting that Ryan Mania chose to ride Doyen Breed instead of Hill 16. I just wonder if Hill 16's maybe having a prep for the Scottish National, a race he was running in pretty well last season when I think he fell about 4 out. And I just think it's interesting that Ryan Mania rides for the first time this season as well. Like, Doyen Breed was a very decent novice last season. They had some very strong form, second to 3 under through 5, second in the Reynoldstown, albeit fairly well beaten in that Reynoldstown. It wasn't the best renewal, but he's dropped from a peak mark of 143 to 131 here. And he hasn't really been devoid of promise this season. I thought he ran an encouraging race behind Melodrama last time out in a small field. I mean, we know what Melodrama's like. He gets out in front. He just kind of gallops on remorselessly. Doyen Breed was staying on all the way. Couldn't close the gap, but I think there's every reason to expect to improve. I say this is only his 8th start over fences, and he somehow managed to drop 12 pounds this season. I think there's a chance he's pretty well handicapped. And on his 4 starts at Kelso, he's finished second on all 4 occasions, which wouldn't bode well necessarily from the win point of view, but I think he's pretty much likely to be there or thereabouts. He's a very strong stayer. He's probably been crying out for a return to a real stamina test. Any more rain will be very much appreciated, and he's handicapped to go very close in a race like this. Okay.
Jake Price comments here, Charlie. If Sandy Thompson doesn't win this, we're all in trouble, and I'd be inclined to agree with Jake here.
Yeah, I think Jake's spot on there. We're in big trouble if Sandy Thompson doesn't win this. I mean, the only thing I'd add to Dan's appraisal there as well is the fact that, you know, the last day was 2.5 and this is 3.25 miles as well, which is massively in Doyen Breed's favor as well. So for all those reasons, he's massive. He's very, very well handicapped. He ran a race full of promise in a trip that's sort of a good half a mile or more short of his best. And so 3.25 miles, it's right up his street. And hopefully he can go one better at Kelso than he has previously.
Okay, yeah. And incidentally, Jake Price Racing, great account to follow on Twitter. If you want entries, I guess he'll be doing the same for the Aintree Festival, but also daily tipping as well. Tipped a couple of winners over the last couple of days. Before we get into Meydan, just a quick reminder, if you are listening to the podcast, we'd really appreciate you hit that like button on our YouTube channel and subscribe for free, completely free, and you'll get all our content there. And you can turn your push notifications on, turn the bell beside when you subscribe, and you'll never miss a podcast. And also we will have myself and Ollie will sit down for a 10-minute chat discussing what has been an unbelievable week from mainly review, but also looking ahead to the week ahead. So that should be in your podcast feeds now Friday afternoon if you are listening or beyond. So Meydan, look, I'm not going to lie, Steve, I don't have much planned Saturday, so I will be watching Meydan, and I will probably have a bet or two. So if you to have one bet on the whole card of the Dubai World Cup card, who are you backing? Oh,
get up early because it's in the very first race, the Godolphin Mile. Now, the Japanese horses have gone over in some number, and what they did in Saudi and what they have been doing, then you'd think they'd be very competitive. But in the 12:05 GMT, I think, I hope so.
Take your word for it.
Bathrat Leon. And Bathrat Leon won this race last year when a huge outsider, but he won't be an outsider this time. He came over to Britain and ran fourth in the Sussex Stakes. And that sort of showed that he's a very good horse. And he won last time at Saudi it's not even 7 furlongs. I think they call it the 1351 turf sprint. So it was a different surface. And it was a shorter trip, and it's that 6 3/4 furlongs, and he still had the pace to do it. He's got to get across from stall 8, but I can't see that being a problem. He won the race last year from the front, and I just think he's going to do it again. He's about 4.0, but I just think he is absolutely miles ahead. I think he should be 6 to 4, 2.5.
Could get
well recovered.
Yeah, 2.5, Steve. Yeah, correct. It actually nearly passed me by until you corrected there. Charlie, one bet for you on the card.
Yeah, just in the 4 o'clock, the Shima Classic. I mean, again, there's a Japanese horse, Equinox, that's won its last 2 starts in Grade 1 company. It'd be tough to beat. Rebels Romance for the Godolphin team that took out the Breeders' Cup Turf. But Mostadaf, I thought, was unbelievably impressive in Saudi last time. He's been a quirky horse, but it might just be that he's sort of about ready to peak at 5 years of age. I know George Bowie, I spoke to him, and he really thought Miss the Cut was going to take a lot of beating in that race in Saudi, and this horse absolutely blitzed them. And like I say, he just has the potential to maybe rate a bit higher, you know, as in he was always highly regarded, but a bit of a quirky customer. And I think he's 7.5 or 8.0. And I just thought he was a bit of value in what is invariably a very competitive contest.
Yeah, been a lot of talk for that Japanese horse, but Charlie is taking him on. Dan, will you watch Meydan?
If it's floating around, I guess I'll have a view.
That's good.
You won't be surprised to learn that I haven't got a betting interest. I think Lingfield was as far as I was willing to go. But Meydan's definitely out of my comfort zone.
Meydan, it's a good bit away, isn't it? Yeah. We'll move on to our long shot section. In and around 10.0 or bigger, we ask for. At the end of the day, if you're putting winners in here, we won't fall out over a price or two difference on the point scale. Where we go for this? Charlie, straight back to you. The 5 o'clock in Newbury.
Yeah, veterans race at Newbury. Sir Ivan, he's down, I think, £4 since the beginning of the season. Like, he's a horse that's well handicapped. He's ran well in a couple of occasions in these sort of contests before being outclassed in the final at Sandown. And again, he's got reasonable Newbury form. He's won over the course and distance before. And I just think, yeah, he's got some upside. And I think it was I'm not sure what price are we offering him up, Dan? I mean, but he was certainly a very much a win and place option in a race as it should be, full of plenty of sort of exposed performers that are sort of waiting to have their turn.
Yeah, not priced up yet in any of the sports book or the match book, but keep an eye on that for a double figure price, hopefully for Charlie. Dan, over to you. 425 Newbury, another race we didn't cover.
Yeah, it won't be for everyone because he's been called a few names in recent times, but I think in the one place he is priced up, he's a double figure price, and that's Monsieur Lecoq in the 425. Look, I think crucially, he's back on soft ground for the first time since winning at Newbury just over a year ago. That win came off 128. He's now down to 120 now. And he hasn't been running completely devoid of any promise this season. And I just think he's dropped to a very tempting mark. If you look at his record in handicap chases on soft ground or worse, I think it reads 1P1. So clearly these are his conditions. He hasn't had them in a fair old time as well. He's been constantly running on good ground. I'm not sure that necessarily brings him to best effect. And bearing in mind, he was only a 9.0 chance for the big 2 mile handicap chase at Ascot in October, off £10 higher. I think in a race that's far weaker, I think there's a few very questionable sorts in here. Back at a track we know he likes, softer ground in his favour. I just think he has the potential to be overpriced here, and he's the kind of horse I'm willing to give a chance to at those odds.
Okay, double figure price there. Charlie, incidentally, priced up 1 place so far, Sir Ivan 13.0. So there you go, double figure price. And if you are looking at these long shots, particularly 5-10 minutes before the off, you would be surprised at the exchange prices. Even Imperi Pass 3.5 SB went off 4.7 on the matchbook betting exchange. And look, I would have got out of my bed if I could have, just because of that drift. But obviously, Cheltenham drifts are different. Anyway, I digress. Steve, Philippa Sue.
Yeah, Philippa Sue in the Big Mares final at Newbury. Tough race, but way overpriced.
Okay, we'll move on to best bets. Normally we do these 1 words, but we have a couple of cases to make. So Dan, over to you. Banger.
Yeah, off the banger. Race that caught my eye because Don McCain and Tim Leslie have 3 in this race. They have a third of the field, including Manila Trump, who Brian Hughes rides. And I don't think that really bodes well, because I think this is probably a prep run for the Grand National. And the others, while they have their chances, I'm never really a big fan of when an owner or a trainer run 3 in a race. So Tanganyika, on the other hand, clearly a horse on upward curve, having won very cosily on his first over an intermediate trip last time out. I thought that was a decent race for the grade over at Carlisle. The front 2 pulled very nicely clear. They were both fairly unexposed types. I think that bodes well. And he's done it a fair shade cosily as well, like up £7 to a mark 118. I don't think that's a limit of ability whatsoever. Bearing in mind, he made his British handicap debut for mark 120. And they clearly thought a fair bit of him earlier in the season. I think he made his British debut in the Victor Ladorum. He was in a Class 2 handicap on his handicap debut as well. I think there's been an expectation of this horse for some time, and it's only just now, I think, over intermediate trips, he's starting to realise that. I think when I checked, he was a 5.0 chance. And in a race where a few seem far more exposed or have other targets potentially in mind, he looks to sort this on an upward curve. And I think now he's up to this intermediate trip, there's more to come from him.
Okay. Move on to Charlie as well. Also got a banger.
Yeah, Field Alone in the 418 at Banger. This was a really progressive point-to-pointer last year, and who won a 100 chase at Cheltenham at the end of the season. She does jump markedly out to her right, but it doesn't seem to affect her. I've been training now with Ollie Greenall and Josh Guerrero. She started off at Hereford in novice chase over 2 miles, lacked a bit of toe, and then was third over 2.5 at Huntingdon behind Dibble Decker, who's come out and won again since. She's been crying out for this step back up to 3 miles, and she gets it. And like she got dropped a further 3 as well at Huntingdon the last day, down to a mark of 108. I would say on her exploits point to point in that's definitely below where she should be ability wise, and this represents by far her best chance to get off the marker for Ollie and Josh on the rules.
Okay. I mentioned my best bet's 225 at Kelso. I think the top rated him defies a long absence and wins at around 10.0. I think Nigel Twiston Davis will prime for a big performance. Steve, your best bet?
My best bet is Bonte at Kelso. I think he's just really, really well handicapped and has been lined up for this final. Okay,
that's our best bets done. Before we go, any Grand National tips, guys, anti-post picks for any listeners who've stayed with us for 44 minutes? I'm throwing this at you, but while you think, I actually think, and I'm coming around to any second now, still being overpriced. Really impressed with the prep race. Of course, he's going to have to defy weight, higher than last year, etc. There will probably be a novice that beats him. But I think if Noble Yates was in the race last year, he would have bolted up in the Grand National. And I just think he's a little bit underappreciated by the market. Dan, any early fancies for the Grand National?
You really have sprung this on us. Look,
yeah.
I think Corach Rambler is going to be there or thereabouts. I just question with Corach, like obviously he's £10 well in now. The only issue I have with him is he is very quirky when he hits the front. And if he hits the front over the last or before, that's a hell of a long run in for him to be in. all that way. I think if there's one man who's going to be able to ride him correctly, it's Derek Fox. He's done it twice in the Ultimate to perfection, but they're going to have to hold on to him for a long time. If they can hold on to him and get him to peak coming around the elbow, I think he'll be very tough to beat because he's clearly a horse that will relish that test, I think.
Yeah, and it is tough to hold up a horse in the National, I guess. Steve, any early fancies for the Aintree Festival in general, or are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, looking forward to it because there's a good break between Cheltenham and Aintree this year, so you should get plenty of the Cheltenham stars turning up. The Grand National these days, it's not like it used to be where I think it was more scope for something to come in a bit of a surprise. These days, it seems to be dominated at the top of the market. I know it wasn't last year because of Noble Yates, who was my best bet of the entire meeting. Unfortunately, that meeting was at the Cheltenham Festival, where if he'd have run this year's Ultima off that mark, he'd have been about 1 to 50 instead of finishing 9th. But we won't let that get on. But no, Noble Yates, last year's winner, he broke the mould a little bit in being a 7-year-old winning the National, which gives him scope to win another, certainly. And Corrick Rambler has been extremely impressive in what he's been doing. And apart from that, I'll have a good look at it and come up with something at 33s or 40s. They'll probably finish 7th or 8th. But
my two biggest bets for Cheltenham last year: Langerdan in the Martin Pipe, Side of Burley in the Pertemps. So
it's a good.
We need a counselling session here, lads. This is brutal stuff.
It's nice to be ahead of your time. That's the thing.
Exactly. What I saw, it wasn't even
balance, but
it wasn't even the Cheltenham race. It was the Side of Burley at Aintree. Had Florian Porter backed for that Liverpool hurdle, isn't it? And oh my God, please don't win. So
you surely covered offside of Burley in the Stayers this year, then surely.
I had a very small saver, but I'd even tipping him up. I was like, I didn't even consider it. It was only last minute. Anyway, very small money, unfortunately. Charlie, Aintree in general, looking forward to it.
Can't wait. Yeah, as in, to be fair, I think it's way more fun than Cheltenham. I'm going to put it out there. I think it's if you like going to Cheltenham, I mean the racing. Don't get me wrong, mate, but if you just want a good time, Liverpool is the best. You know, there's no doubt about it. You know, as in and I mean, I agree with what Dan says. Corrick Rambler, it was a big trial, that wasn't it? I thought Galvin was also slightly interesting. I thought he went with a lot more zest in the cross country race. You know, and we've seen that perk a horse up before going on for this.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't really know what to make. I thought people were getting carried away with Noble Yates of that being a really good Gold Cup Grand National trial. You know, I thought he just got behind and just stayed on when it was all over. I still think he's got it all to do off that. What is he, about £20 harder than he was last year?
Yeah, big difference. Look, it has been done before about horses running well. A couple of JP horses that I just can't remember the names of ran very well. Minella something, I think, and a few others ran decent races in the National. The Druid's Nephew ran in the Ultima, similar to Corrick Rambler, before coming second, I think, in the Grand National, or at least running a big race.
Minella Rocco, was it?
Minella Rocco, that's it. Come on, Steve. But Charlie, I agree with you. I have to work a lot for Cheltenham, but I'll be over at Aintree this year, so I look forward to seeing you if you're going to be there.
Thursday night,
I agree.
Mate,
I think
you'll find me.
Aintree's wonderful. Aintree's a wonderful meeting.
Yeah, looking forward to it immensely. Well, thanks to Steve, Dan, and Charlie. We could have talked about Aintree all day there, but thanks for joining us. Hit that like button, as we said, it'd be much appreciated. There will be a lot of Aintree content, including Matt Toombs, who we've signed up for a Grand National Trends article, who incidentally is going to be looking at the novices, completely going against what Steve just said in the Grand National. So look, it's a game of opinions. Until then, enjoy the race, and Tom will be back, thank God, next Friday, so I can take a good old break. Until then, we'll chat to you. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.